Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Dipankar and in this video we are going to talk about how we can use a remote action inside integration procedure. So using a remote action we can actually call an Apex class from the integration procedure, and from the integration procedure we can pass some inputs to the Apex method, and from the Apex method we can pass some outputs to the integration procedure as well. So there is this link provided by Salesforce in which they have explained what are the things you need to do in order to create an Apex class so that you can use as a remote action inside integration procedure, right? So the first thing we need to do is to implement this velocity open interface too. And because of we are using this interface, we again have to implement the method present inside this interface as well. So we have to implement this global object invoke method as well, right? So let's actually go back to our Salesforce omnistudio org and let's try to do the hands-on. So I have a new integration procedure over here and it does not have any other actions. To build a remote action, we can go back to the panel on the left and scroll a little bit down. You can see something like remote action and you can drag it to here. This remote action needs two things, remote class and remote method. So let's give it a name. Let's suppose we want to use this studio remote action class. We will be building this class now, and let's try to give it a name like get filtered contacts, right? So what we are trying to do is to create this Apex class. So I'll go to dev console, right? So we'll come to file new Apex class and paste the name of the Apex class over here. Since it creates the Apex class, let's go back to the documentation and see what's the first thing we need to do. Let's copy this open interface too, because we need to implement this interface first, right? So you can see something like velocity underscore ins. This velocity underscore ins is nothing but the namespace of your org. So in my case the namespace of the org is omnistudio. If you want to see what is the namespace of your org, you can go to setup, then go to install packages, and you can see the namespace of your org over here, right? And since we are implementing this interface, again we have to implement the invoke method as well, right? So let's go back to the documentation and copy this method as well. So I'll come over here, hit enter, and I'll just use this method name. And what I can do for now, since this is returning an object, I can just simply return null over here, right? So now we have used this remote class over here, right? So then what is the significance of this remote method? So for us, the name of the remote method is get filtered contacts, right? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to make this class as global because our method is already global. You can see this method name over here, right? So let's suppose we want to use this Apex class from different integration procedures, right? For our remote actions, the method name we have configured is as get filtered values, right? So what we can see, if right, if the method name is equals to the method that we have given inside integration procedure, right? If the method name is equals to this, right? So let's suppose in that condition we want to execute some piece of code, right? So this is the significance of the method name, right? So now since we are getting the method name and we want to execute some piece of code, right? We also need some inputs, right? So where we can get these inputs from? If we go to the preview, right, in this preview we can pass the inputs. Let's suppose we want to pass the input of account id and first name. Let's try to give the first name as my name, right? And let's to copy account id of this account. So now we are passing these to account id and first name over here, right? So we also can pass something else, right? Let's try to pass something else, and let's to pass some dummy value over here, right? So how can we get all these inputs? To get all these inputs we can refer this input node over here, right? Since we are getting this account id and the first name as a string, right? What we can do, we can go to dev console, right? So we can write string account id should be whatever the value we are getting from the inputs, right? So in that case we can refer this input map over here. So from the input map we can write input.get. Get is a method from the map data structure, right? So we can use input.get the key name, right? The key name over here is the account ID. And similarly, if we want to get the first name, right? So what we can get, like the if the first name, right? The first name should be equals to the first name we are getting from here, right? And again, since this returns a map of string comma objects, we again have to typecast it, right? So let me try explicitly typecast into string. Similar thing I can do over here for the first name as well, right? So this is a way in which I am getting the inputs, right? So there is actually a best practice, right? So there is a typo over there. Let me fix that. The best practice is not to send all this entire input parameters from the integration procedure, right? Because I don't need this something else node from here, but it will still be passed to the apex class from the integration procedure, right? So if you want to restrict it, the best way is to go to the remote action, right? You can see this checkbox over here, send only additional input, and here you can do for the account ID, you can just write account ID. And for the first name, right, for the first name we can also do the same thing. In this way we are sending only additional inputs, and this something else value will not be passed to the apex class, right? And let's suppose we want to get the output from this remote action. What we can do, we can also need a response action so that we should be able to show the response. And in this response action, I am whatever the response I am getting from the remote action, I am pasting it over here, right? So here we have seen how can we use the method name and how we can use the input. But what if we want to pass some output, right? What we can do here, we can write output dot put by referring this output map over here. Let's suppose I'll say I'll also now want to pass the inputs values for now. Let's suppose I want to pass the account ID and first name, right? And this would be concatenated by an underscore, right? So in this way what I can do is that I should be able to pass the first name and the account ID from this integration procedure. So there is no error. Now let's go back to our integration procedure and see if we are able to get the output from the apex class or not. So I'm clicking on execute over here, right? It's taking some time, but you can see we are getting the input values, the account ID followed by the name. I am passing from here as well, right? So the next way is this is a simple way in which we can use the remote action, right? So let's suppose based on this account ID and first name I want to call an apex method, right? How can we do that? So let's suppose I also want to get response whatever the contact's name containing the first name present inside this account, I want to show them as an output, right? So what I can do, I can write output dot put, right? So let's say I want to send them is the name of filtered contacts, right? So how we can do that? Okay, so to do that, for now let's try to create a new method, right? To create a new method, let me try to create a new public static. Let's suppose I want to return a list of contacts, right? List of contact, right? I'll name as get filtered contacts, and inside the filter contacts I'll take account and the first name, right? And based on this account and the first name, what I want to do is that I will return the ID, then first name, then last name, then email or maybe phone from contact, right? And where the condition should be where the account ID, right? The account ID should be equals to the account ID I'm passing, and also the first name, right? Also the first name should be equals to the first name I am passing over here, right? Let's try to name it as first name, right? And there is some error over here. It says output not present. Okay, okay, it says SEC name. It should be account ID ideally, because the account ID should be equals to account ID, right? And the first name should be equals to the first name, right? So now if I want to return this list of contacts, right, based on the account name ID and first name, I can simply copy over the this method, and in place of this output dot put we are sending blank previously, I can send this filtered contacts with account ID and first name, right? And it will directly execute this method, and whatever the value it will get from this method, it will return as an output as a list of objects, right? List of contacts as filtered contacts, right? So let me click on save, right? And let's go back to our integration procedure and try to execute if we are able to get the values or not. So here if you see, I am getting two nodes inside filter contacts, right? And both of them are returning the ID, first name, last name, email, phone, right? And they are also returning some other values, that's fine. But what you can see is that based on this first name Dipankar, right, those two contacts have been returned, right? And we can also write some yeah, get some other values like input values, which are the values we have configured previously. The account ID concatenated with the first name with an underscore, right? So this is how we can put the outputs, right? So let me recap everything quickly what we have done over here. So to create a remote action, we need this remote class and remote method, and we have to create a remote class over here and implement this velocity open interface too. And inside this velocity open interface too, we have to use an invoke method, right? And whatever the remote method we are giving it over here as well, this is just like an identifier, right? Using this method name identifier, we can execute some block of code conditionally, right? And again, if you want to get the inputs from this integration procedure, the best practice is to send only additional inputs, and we can pass the inputs like over here as well. So this is the key and this is the value, and based on this key we can write input dot get key, and we can store it inside some variable, and we can use this in the apex in future, right? And second thing is that if you want to pass some output from this apex method to integration procedure, we can reference the output node and pass the values like this by saying output dot put the key name followed by the value, right? So this is in simple how we can configure a remote action inside integration procedure. So please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or queries, and that's it for this video, and thank you for watching.